Today, we celebrate a truly remarkable accomplishment in the history of mankind, the recovery of a lost liberty. This is the story of the National Rifle Association's quarter-century march toward restoration of the Second Amendment. Told with the actual words of those who led the way, in remarks at annual meetings spanning our nation, and 25 years of extraordinary leadership. Too many have forgotten or don't know that 25 years ago, our cause was almost a lost cause. The sweeping Gun Control Act of 1968 had dismantled the Second Amendment and invited terrible abuses of lawful gun owners and dealers, reducing a right to a privilege to be practiced at your own risk.
That act gave too much power to the government to regulate the activities of gun owners.
I was there when this country was so anti-gun, nobody even dreamed we could pass a federal law to protect gun owners. But it was called the McClure-Volkmer Firearms Owners Protection Act of 1986.
The McClure-Volkmer bill is an attempt not to repeal the 1968 Gun Control Act, although I'd be happy to do that, but to limit its abuses.
We want it, and it's a great big reason you have your guns today.
The triumphant Firearm Owner Protection Act was bedrock on which the Second Amendment would slowly be rebuilt against overwhelming odds.
It's a nasty truth, but those who seek to inflict harm are not fazed by gun control laws. I happen to know this from personal experience.
The single greatest threat to you and your Second Amendment freedom is the armed criminal and the gridlock, bankrupt criminal justice system that sets him free.
That's what drives politicians to ban firearms. That's what frightens voters to elect anti-gun politicians. And that's what fuels the media assaults on yours and my rights.
You know, if all those people that are spending so much time out there, spending a lot of effort, money, in trying to take away your guns and push gun control on you, would divert that same energy and time and effort to the criminal and controlling crime in this country, we'd all be a hell of a lot better off.
Criminals break laws for a living. Experience and common sense tells us new laws won't deter them.
And you can pass more than 20,000 gun laws we have on the book, and you're not going to accomplish a thing until you get tough to the criminal.
You do not take weapons away from law-abiding citizens and then somehow miraculously conclude you've made them safer. Because the people who are going to have guns illegally will continue to do it by definition. Criminals, people who break the law.
If gun control worked, the District of Columbia would have no violence. And yet it is the murder capital of the planet.
Everyone's scared except the criminals.
We would have a safer America if Clinton and Gore were half as interested in locking up criminals as they are in locking up our guns.
Any felon caught with a gun, no matter what he's doing, goes to jail under Project Exile. The only place violence has increased, take a guess, in the media.
The NRA has long led the way in promoting gun safety and in advocating the toughest penalties for those who commit crimes with firearms.
And locking them up, the hardcore criminals up, and throwing away the keys, the best gun control law we could ever have.
During this 25-year restoration of the Second Amendment, violent crime rates dropped from the highest to the lowest in half a century, but not without a fight.
Our differences with the anti-gunners are like a blood feud that'll go on until they leave our constitutional rights alone.
They think they know more about freedom, the Constitution, and patriotism than we do.
In November 1994, you launched a political revolution that changed the face of Congress and rewrote Bill Clinton's idea of American history.
We should not be discouraged by the anti-gun propaganda campaign or their rare victories. We are winning the fight for the hearts and minds of the people.
Mr. Gore thinks he'll win if he can frighten women with lies about guns and then seduce them with something called gun control. Well, manipulating women may be the Clinton legacy, but it won't work.
We don't have to listen to the debating society located in New York. It wants to redo the world their way, which is not freedom, but to take the guns away.
They want to ban every gun in America. It's just that simple.
In state after state, we raise the issue of self-defense through a right to carry.
The truth is, very few actually choose to carry a gun, but the bad guys don't know which few they are.
More than half of your fellow Americans now live in a right-to-carry state.
Crime is down in every one of those states.
Let every anti-gun U.S. senator and candidate hear my voice. Never go to bed unafraid of what this body can do to your political career.
For most of this 25-year battle to restore our freedoms, gun-hating politicians were made even more potent opponents with the almost unanimous support of mainstream media.
Some people in the media have tried everything they can to associate the NRA with terrorists, with hate groups, with extremists.
When they lie to further their political agenda, maybe it's time to examine the true role of the First Amendment.
NBC is producing a docudrama of the Branch Davidian tragedy and is trying to buy NRA decals and posters and signs. Anything with NRA on it.
We're often cast as the villain.
Well, I've had it. If they try to rig history and libel the NRA, I'm going to throw the book at them.
All we ask is for the media to allow us equal access to the same Constitution.
They use their First Amendment right to attack and attempt to destroy our Second Amendment right.
Everybody here and everybody that we know commits themselves to that daily defense of our Constitution and never be afraid to stand up and say so.
The press does not own the Bill of Rights.
So listen up, ABC, NBC, CBS, Newsweek, Time. Are you reporting my words? Because I defy you to argue with the truth. If we have to, we'll launch the good ship NRA, and we'll drop anchor in international waters just off the coast, and we'll broadcast the truth from our own TV towers.
Funny thing happened. I was coming into the hall here this afternoon to do an interview, and a man stopped me very politely, autograph book and pen in hand, and he said, "Excuse me, Mr. Heston, could you please get me Wayne LaPierre's autograph?"
As traditional media lost influence, a new adversary gained ground against a traditional stronghold, hunting.
The same elitists who oppose gun rights have joined with the animal rights extremists to destroy hunting.
All of this hysteria over gun control has resulted in unnecessary restrictions on the national pastime of hunting wild game.
Hunter access is being restricted. They close roads, rivers, bridges, and public lands. They bury hunters in blizzards of red tape and fees and regulations and fines.
If you can't see this, it says PETA. People for the Eating of Tasty Animals. I'm all for it. Thank you.
Preserving the right to keep and bear arms requires that hunting remains strong, affordable, and available. I say it's time for every hunter in America to stand with NRA.
At the same time we were taking back the Second Amendment, the Congress, and the White House, the NRA took giant leaps as the world's firearms safety authority.
No group does more to promote gun safety and respect for the laws of this land than the NRA, and I thank you.
We spend more to teach Americans about gun safety than the government and the media combined.
And develop the Eddie Eagle Gun Safety Program, a life-saving service that has reached over 7.5 million youngsters.
We call today on the President and the Congress to provide funding to put the Eddie Eagle Child Safety Program in every elementary classroom in America.
The NRA is the only organization in America that has spent over $100 million on gun safety.
Fact. Accidental gun deaths among children are now the lowest in history.
Eddie Eagle works.
NRA has been blessed with generations of gifted leaders and friends. But from issue to issue and decade to decade, the real power plant driving the NRA is a collective love for and understanding of the sanctity of freedom. A passion put into words and action by our first great warrior, Harlan Carter.
The very essence of all of this is that you deprive a man of a liberty because he might abuse it. And I respectfully submit to you that if we can ever embark upon the principle that because a liberty might be abused, the government can restrict it, restrain it, or abolish it, ladies and gentlemen, you have lost everything.
I hold here in my hand a traditional American flintlock rifle. This is a specimen of those that hark back to those men, those brave men who wrote our Constitution and who later prescribed a Bill of Rights, the second of which we honor and we think of almost every day.
The NRA believes that America's laws were made to be obeyed and that our constitutional liberties are just as important today as 200 years ago.
The greatest thing that the National Rifle Association does is remind Americans of their heritage.
You know, I've always felt a special bond with the members of your group.
I'm proud to display the NRA seal on my cars and trucks, and so are my children.
Thank the Lord that I belong to this great organization.
The NRA has proudly stood in the forefront of America's tradition of equal rights, civil liberties, and freedom long before other organizations took up that noble cause.
We are the one thing that stands between free Americans and the loss of their rights.
If Americans believed in political correctness, we'd still be King George's boys, subject to the British Crown.
If liberals read the rest of the Constitution the way they read the Second Amendment, then gun ownership in America would be mandatory. Every man, woman, and child.
We protect all of the God-given rights guaranteed in the Constitution, even for those citizens who would deny them to us.
We are there, rain or shine, every day.
When ordinary citizens saw for themselves the ferocity of modern-day terrorism, they lined up 3 and 4 deep at gun store counters to reach for America's original homeland security, the Second Amendment.
The Second Amendment is called America's first freedom because it is the right we turn to when all else fails.
When these Bush administration officials affirmed that the Second Amendment protects an individual right, the enemies of freedom were outraged because they fear the Second Amendment for what it really is, a shield against oppression.
The right of Americans to live without fear. That is the heart of the Second Amendment.
Over the last 25 years, I've watched proud, freedom-loving Americans like you get up, get out, go to work to preserve America's freedoms. You are the sons and daughters of liberty.
Mr. Heston and the other founding fathers were pretty doggone smart when they wrote those words.
The Constitution says the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed.
With a fraction of the wealth and influence of those who oppose and vilify us, the NRA still prevails because we stand for the highest ideals humankind has ever sought to preserve.
America is no longer an experiment. It is an accomplishment. Freedom works. You inherited it, and you dare not neglect it.
Blaming guns for horrors such as Columbine is no different than blaming the chains for slavery.
Somehow the media and pundits conveniently overlook that freedom is not partisan. She does not label herself with an R or a D. She welcomes all who would embrace and defend her.
The sound of our guns is the sound of freedom. That exists now as a guiding principle of our country.
The quality of my freedom, my ancestors bought with their blood, is not mine to squander.
If you want to feel the warm breath of freedom on your neck, if you want to touch the pulse of liberty that beaten our founding fathers, you can do so through the majesty of the Second Amendment of the Bill of Rights.
I promise you, we will win back our rightful place in the mainstream of American political debate. Mainstream doesn't mean giving up anything. It means getting back everything.
When ordinary hands can possess such an extraordinary instrument, that symbolizes the full measure of human dignity and liberty.
The Second Amendment is America's first freedom among the entire of that magnificent Bill of Rights. It is the first among equals. History recognizes you as a keeper of freedom's flame. You are what a 21st century patriot looks like.
Today, we stand on the shoulders of giants who went before us. Equal in scope to the women's suffrage and civil rights movements of the 20th century, the gun rights revolution has accomplished no less than the restoration of Second Amendment freedoms. Take pride in the deeds and dedication of this great association. Ours is a better world for it.
We've beat hundreds of bad bills on our watch, from gun licensing to Brady bills, waiting periods,
taxes, surtaxes, and increased license fees.
Ammunition bans. We beat back gun bans, phony ballistic fingerprinting, arsenal licenses, warrantless searches. We burned them on their one-gun-a-month scheme. Ridiculous semi-automatic bills.
The great Brady bill.
Plastic guns. Beat back a conspiracy to limit ammunition clips. And on a national waiting period.
The NRA will move ahead to break the back of violent crime in America.
Prosecute him. That's NRA's Project Exile.
We are the people who helped clean out Congress in 1994
and elected the most pro-Second Amendment Congress in this half of the century.
Year after year, opinion polls consistently show NRA is rated favorably by a majority of Americans.
We gave America crime strike and truth in sentencing and victims' rights and right to carry and a little idea that's gotten great big results called 3 strikes and you're out.
To the database registration schemes we defeated in 20 states last year.
It's the law of the land.
It's a fight for freedom. And that's what free hunter means.
38 states now respect the right to carry.
All but 6 states have range protection on the books.
We didn't let them ban your gun shows.
Or ban your detachable magazines. More state legislatures are moving to shut down the outrageous lawsuits that have been launched by big city mayors to bankrupt the firearms industry.
The United States House of Representatives passed legislation to stop these gutless lawsuits against honest gun makers.
The Department of State told the global gun ban crowd at the United Nations, in no uncertain terms, that our Second Amendment rights were off limits.
Millions of gun owners, with NRA taking the lead, gave Al Gore a good old political field dressing.
Gun owners voted overwhelmingly for President Bush.
The Second Amendment protects an individual right to keep and bear arms, signed by John Ashcroft, Attorney General of the United States.
They've called us, the NRA, just about everything. They've called us uncompromising. They've called us tough. They've called us hard line. Well, we have a message to give to the media today. For once, they got it right.
Today, the NRA is in the news business with 3 national magazines, 4 websites, including our own streaming video, webcasting news site, a weekly radio show, and a TV news magazine that is reaching 92% of American households.
And what you've accomplished speaks for itself.
From my cold, dead hands. From my cold, dead hands.